First contact. The sprawling expanse of Nexus Station hung suspended in the inky void of space, its gleaming spires and interconnected modules a testament to the collaborative efforts of a dozen different alien races. For centuries, it had served as a hub of intergalactic diplomacy and cultural exchange, a neutral ground where species from across the cosmos could meet, trade, and forge alliances. As the station's primary docking bay hummed to life, preparing to receive the latest diplomatic envoy, a young human engineer named Jack Carter wiped the sweat from his brow and surveyed his handiwork. He had just finished recalibrating the bay's atmospheric regulators, ensuring that the incoming delegates would be greeted with an environment perfectly tailored to their unique physiologies. Not bad for a day's work, Jack muttered to himself, a hint of pride in his voice. At 28, he was one of the youngest human engineers on Nexus Station, and certainly one of the few who had earned the grudging respect of his alien colleagues. It hadn't been easy. Humans were still newcomers to the galactic stage, viewed by many of the older races as brash, impulsive, and woefully unprepared for the complexities of interstellar politics. As the massive bay doors began to part, admitting a sleek, silver vessel adorned with intricate spiraling patterns, Jack felt a flutter of excitement in his chest. This was why he had joined the Nexus Engineering Corps, for moments like these, when he could witness firsthand the breathtaking diversity of life that the universe had to offer. The ship's ramp extended, and a procession of tall, graceful figures began to descend. Jack's breath caught in his throat as he laid eyes on the Vexari for the first time. Their skin shimmered with an otherworldly iridescence, shifting between hues of blue and purple as they moved. But it was their eyes that truly captured Jack's attention, large, luminous orbs that seemed to hold the very light of the stars within them. At the head of the delegation strode a Vexari who could only be their leader. She carried herself with an air of quiet authority, her movements fluid and purposeful. As she reached the bottom of the ramp, her gaze swept across the assembled welcoming committee, and for a brief moment, her eyes locked with Jack's. In that instant, Jack felt as though the entire universe had condensed into a single point of connection between them. He saw curiosity in those alien eyes, a flash of something that mirrored his own wonder and excitement at encountering the unknown. The moment passed as quickly as it had come, and Jack shook himself out of his reverie. He had work to do, after all. As the official greetings began, he busied himself with final checks on the environmental systems, stealing glances at the Vexari delegation whenever he could. It wasn't until later that evening, as Jack was making his way through the station's bustling central promenade, that he encountered the Vexari leader again. She stood alone before a vast viewing window, her silhouette etched against the backdrop of swirling nebulae and distant stars. Jack hesitated, torn between his desire to approach her and his awareness of the strict protocols governing interactions with diplomatic guests. But there was something in her solitary stance that called to him, a sense of shared wonderment at the cosmic tapestry spread out before them. Taking a deep breath, Jack stepped forward. "Beautiful, isn't it?" he said softly, coming to stand beside her at a respectful distance. The Vexari turned, surprise evident in her luminous eyes. For a moment, Jack feared he had overstepped, but then her features softened into what he hoped was a smile. "It is indeed," she replied, her voice melodious and slightly accented. "I am Zara, lead diplomat of the Vexari Consortium. And you are?" "Jack Carter, ma'am, station engineer." He offered a small bow, trying to recall the proper etiquette for addressing a Vexari of her status. Zara tilted her head, studying him with open curiosity. "An engineer? How fascinating. I've heard much about human ingenuity since your species joined the galactic community. Tell me, Jack Carter, what do you see when you look out at the stars?" The question caught Jack off guard, but he found himself answering honestly. "Possibility, I suppose. Challenges to overcome, mysteries to unravel. Every star out there is a reminder of how much we still have to learn and explore." A soft chime sounded, signaling the approach of Zara's entourage. Before she turned to leave, she fixed Jack with one last, penetrating gaze. Perhaps we will speak again, Jack Carter. I find myself intrigued by the human perspective. As Zara glided away to rejoin her fellow Vexari, Jack remained rooted to the spot, his heart racing. He had just conversed with one of the most important diplomats on the station, and she had found him intriguing. Little did Jack know that this brief encounter would be the first step on a journey that would challenge everything he thought he knew about his place in the universe, and ultimately reshape the very fabric of interstellar relations. In the days that followed, Jack found himself crossing paths with Zara more frequently than he would have expected. Whether by chance or design, their encounters always seemed to occur in the quieter corners of the station. The Arboretum with its carefully cultivated alien flora, the quantum computation lab where Jack often worked late into the night cycle, or the observation deck where they had first spoken. Each time, Zara engaged him in conversation, her questions probing but never invasive. She seemed genuinely fascinated by human culture and history, and Jack found himself opening up to her in ways he never had with anyone else on the station. But not everyone viewed these interactions with approval. Jack began to notice the whispers and sidelong glances from both his human colleagues and the other alien races aboard Nexus Station. The Vexari, in particular, seemed to regard him with a mixture of suspicion and disdain whenever he was seen in Zara's company. One evening, as Jack was leaving his shift in engineering, he found his path blocked by a group of Vexari diplomats. Their leader, a tall male with piercing silver eyes, stepped forward. "You would do well to remember your place, human," he said, his voice cold and brittle. "Ambassador Zara's time is too valuable to be wasted on maintenance staff." Jack felt his face flush with anger, but he forced himself to remain calm. "With all due respect, sir, I believe the ambassador is capable of choosing her own company." The Vexari's eyes narrowed dangerously. "Do not presume to understand our ways, child of Earth. There are forces at work here beyond your comprehension. For your own sake, and for the sake of your species standing in the galactic community, I suggest you keep your distance from Ambassador Zara." As the group swept past him, leaving Jack alone in the corridor, he couldn't shake the feeling that something larger was brewing beneath the surface of Nexus Station's carefully maintained facade of unity and cooperation. Little did he know that events were already in motion that would soon thrust both him and Zara into the center of a crisis that would shake the very foundations of interstellar diplomacy and test the limits of what a human and a Vexari could accomplish together. The cosmic crucible. As the artificial day cycle of Nexus Station dawned, Jack found himself in the midst of an unprecedented crisis. Alarms blared throughout the station's corridors, their urgent wails piercing through the usual hum of activity. The central atrium, typically a bustling hub of interspecies mingling, had become a chaotic scene of panic and confusion. "Attention all inhabitants," the station's AI intoned, its voice unnaturally calm amidst the mayhem. "A quantum anomaly has been detected in the station's core. All non-essential personnel are to evacuate to designated safety zones immediately." Jack's engineering instincts kicked into high gear. He knew the station's systems like the back of his hand, and a quantum anomaly in the core could spell disaster on a cosmic scale. Without hesitation, he began making his way towards the central control room, his mind already racing through possible solutions. As he navigated the crowded corridors, a flash of iridescent blue caught his eye. Zara stood at a junction, her luminous eyes wide with concern as she attempted to calm a group of panicked Tralaxian merchants. "Zara," Jack called out, pushing through the throng. "What's going on?" The Vexari ambassador turned, relief evident in her expression. "Jack, thank the cosmic winds. The station's quantum stabilizers are failing. If we can't contain the anomaly, it could tear a hole in the fabric of space-time itself." Jack's blood ran cold. He had always known that working on an interstellar station came with risks, but this was beyond anything he had ever prepared for. "I'm heading to the control room now. Maybe I can help." Zara nodded, her otherworldly beauty somehow enhanced by the gravity of the situation. "I'll come with you. My people have experience with quantum mechanics that might prove useful." As they made their way to the heart of the station, Jack couldn't help but notice the looks they were receiving. Even in the midst of crisis, the sight of a human and a Vexari working together seemed to give many pause. But there was no time to dwell on interspecies politics. The fate of Nexus Station, and potentially the surrounding sector of space, hung in the balance. The control room was a hive of frantic activity when they arrived. Alien technicians from a dozen different species worked feverishly at consoles, their tentacles, appendages, and in some cases, pure energy forms, manipulating holographic displays with desperate speed. Chief Engineer Zixtat, a being of pure crystalline thought, pulsed with agitation as Jack and Zara approached. "Carter, what in the name of the eternal void are you doing here? And with a diplomat, no less." "Sir," Jack said, snapping to attention, "I believe I can help. And Ambassador Zara has expertise that could be crucial." Zixtat's crystalline form shimmered with skepticism, but the dire readings on the main view screen left little room for argument. "Fine, but if you make things worse, I'll have you ejected into the nearest black hole myself." Jack and Zara wasted no time. As they pored over the quantum readouts, a plan began to form in Jack's mind, a plan so audacious, so unlike anything attempted before, that it just might work. "We need to invert the polarity of the quantum flux," he muttered, more to himself than anyone else. "But to do that, we'd need a power source unlike anything on the station." Zara's eyes widened in realization. "The Vexari Heartstone," she breathed. "It's been in my people's possession for millennia, passed down through generations of diplomats. Its energy is unique." Jack turned to her, hope and determination blazing in his eyes. "Could it work?" Zara hesitated for just a moment before nodding. "It's never been used for something like this before, but in theory, yes, it could stabilize the anomaly." "Wait just a moment," Zixtat interjected, his crystalline form pulsing with alarm. "You're suggesting we use an alien artifact of unknown power to manipulate a quantum anomaly. The risks are incalculable." Jack stood his ground. "With all due respect, sir, we're out of options. If we don't try something drastic, there won't be a station left to save." For a tense moment, the control room fell silent save for the urgent beeping of various alarms. Then slowly, Zixtat's form shifted to a hue that Jack had learned to recognize as resignation. "Very well, Carter, but if this goes wrong, it's on your head." What followed was a race against time unlike anything Jack had ever experienced. As Zara retrieved the Heartstone, a pulsing, opalescent gem that seemed to defy the laws of physics, Jack and a team of the station's best engineers worked to modify the quantum stabilizers to accept its otherworldly energy. The anomaly grew with each passing moment, distorting the very fabric of reality around the station's core. Strange, ethereal shapes began to manifest in the air, and more than once Jack felt his perception of time and space waver. Finally, with alarms screaming and the station itself groaning under the strain, they were ready. Jack looked to Zara, who held the Heartstone with reverence. "Are you sure about this?" he asked, suddenly acutely aware of what he was asking her to risk. Not just a priceless artifact, but a piece of her people's heritage. Zara met his gaze, her alien eyes filled with a mixture of fear and determination. "We have no choice. For the sake of everyone on this station, for the sake of proving that different species can work together in times of crisis, we must try." With a nod, Jack activated the modified stabilizers. The Heartstone pulsed with blinding light, its energy surging through the station's systems. For a heart-stopping moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then, with a sound like the universe itself taking a breath, the quantum anomaly began to shrink. The control room erupted in cheers as the readings stabilized. Jack turned to Zara, his face split in a wide grin of relief and triumph. Without thinking, he pulled her into an embrace, an act that in any other circumstance would have been a grave breach of diplomatic protocol. But in that moment, as human and Vexari clung to each other in the wake of averted catastrophe, something shifted. The barriers of species and culture seemed to melt away, leaving only the shared joy of survival and the dawning realization that, together, they had achieved the impossible. As they pulled apart, Jack and Zara locked eyes, a new understanding passing between them. They had faced the void together and emerged victorious. But little did they know, this was only the beginning of their journey. A journey that would challenge the very foundations of galactic society and prove that, sometimes, the most unlikely partnerships can change the course of history itself. The story of the human engineer and the Vexori diplomat who saved Nexus Station would soon spread throughout the galaxy, becoming a symbol of what could be achieved when different species set aside their differences and worked together. But for Jack and Zara, standing amid the chaos of the control room, it was simply the moment they realized that their destinies were now irrevocably intertwined. Echoes of revelation. The aftermath of the quantum anomaly crisis reverberated through Nexus Station like ripples in a cosmic pond. Jack and Zara found themselves at the center of a maelstrom of attention, their unprecedented collaborations sparking both admiration and controversy across the galactic community. As the station's systems gradually returned to normal, a new tension simmered beneath the surface. Whispers of quantum saviors and cosmic dew echoed through the corridors, but not all reactions were positive. Many species viewed the partnership between a human and a Vexari with suspicion, fearing it upset the delicate balance of power that had existed for millennia. One rotation after the crisis, Jack received an urgent summons to the Nexus High Council chamber. As he entered the vast, circular room, he found himself facing not only the station's leadership, but also a holographic array of representatives from various galactic factions. The Arcturian Overseer, a being of pure energy contained within a shimmering force field, spoke first. "Engineer Carter, your actions during the recent crisis were unexpected. While we cannot deny the results, many question the wisdom of allowing untested human methods to influence station operations." Jack stood tall, his resolve strengthened by the memory of what he and Zara had accomplished together. With respect, Overseer, it wasn't just human methods. It was a collaboration, proof that when species work together, we can achieve the impossible. A murmur rippled through the assembled dignitaries. The Zixtari ambassador, a crystalline entity that sparkled with every movement, chimed in. And what of the Vexari Heartstone? An artifact of immense cultural significance used without proper authorization. The Vexari Consortium demands an explanation. Before Jack could respond, the chamber doors slid open and Zara strode in, her iridescent form commanding attention. "I authorized it," she declared, her voice ringing with authority. "As the Vexari representative, I made the decision to use our people's treasure to save countless lives. If there are consequences to face, I will face them." The room erupted into a cacophony of alien voices, each species weighing in on the unprecedented events. Jack and Zara exchanged a glance, a silent understanding passing between them. They had crossed a line, challenged the status quo, and there was no going back. As the debate raged on, a new alarm suddenly blared through the station. The main view screen flickered to life, showing a massive fleet of ships dropping out of hyperspace near Nexus Station. Their design was unlike anything Jack had ever seen, sleek, predatory vessels that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. The Arcturian Overseer's energy form pulsed with alarm. Impossible. The Void Harbingers were thought to be nothing more than a myth. Zara stepped forward, her eyes wide with recognition. The ancient enemy, spoken of only in Vexari legends. They're drawn to quantum disturbances. We must have attracted their attention with our actions. As panic began to spread through the council chamber, Jack's mind raced. The station's defenses, while formidable, were not designed to repel a fleet of this magnitude. They needed a plan, and fast. "The Heartstone," he said suddenly, turning to Zara. "If we could amplify its power, maybe we could create a quantum barrier around the station." Zara's luminous eyes met his, understanding dawning. It's never been done before, but, yes, it might work. But Jack, the energy required, it could burn out the stone forever. The weight of the decision hung heavy in the air. The Heartstone was more than just a powerful artifact. It was a cornerstone of Vexari culture, a symbol of their people's wisdom and achievements. To sacrifice it would be to erase a piece of their history. Jack looked around the chamber at the faces, both alien and familiar, of those who called Nexus Station home. Sometimes, he said softly, we have to let go of the past to secure the future. Zara nodded, a mix of sorrow and determination in her eyes. For the sake of all species, for the dream of unity that Nexus represents, we must try. As the Void Harbinger's fleet drew closer, Jack and Zara raced against time once more. With the reluctant blessing of the High Council, they began the dangerous process of integrating the Heartstone into the station's main power grid. Engineers from a dozen species worked alongside them, old rivalries set aside in the face of annihilation. The air crackled with energy as the Heartstone's power surged through Nexus Station's systems, pushing them far beyond their intended limits. Just as the first Void Harbinger ships entered weapons range, a shimmering barrier of pure quantum energy erupted around Nexus Station. The enemy's initial barrage splashed harmlessly against it, their otherworldly weapons unable to penetrate the field. But the strain on the station was immense. Conduits overloaded, systems failed, and at the heart of it all, the Heartstone pulsed with an intensity that threatened to tear it apart. In the control room, Jack and Zara stood side by side, their hands intertwined as they poured every ounce of their will into maintaining the barrier. Around them, the combined efforts of the station's diverse inhabitants created a symphony of cooperation unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. As the Void Harbingers launched wave after wave of attacks, the barrier held. Hours passed, feeling like an eternity, until finally, impossibly, the enemy fleet began to retreat. They had encountered something they couldn't understand or overcome, the united will of 1,000 species, standing as one against the darkness. When the last Void Harbinger ship disappeared into the depths of space, a cheer went up that shook the very foundations of Nexus Station. But for Jack and Zara, the victory was bittersweet. As the quantum barrier faded, the Heartstone, the precious artifact that had saved them all, crumbled to dust. Zara cradled the remnants in her hands, tears shimmering in her alien eyes. "A piece of my people's soul, gone forever," she whispered. Jack placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. "Not gone," he said softly, "transformed. Its energy lives on in every person on this station, in the bonds we forged today." As news of their victory spread throughout the galaxy, Jack and Zara found themselves at the center of a new legend. The tale of the human and the Vexari who had united the species of Nexus Station to defeat an ancient evil would be told for generations to come. But for Jack and Zara, standing amidst the wreckage of the control room, their hands still clasped together, it was the beginning of something far more personal. They had glimpsed a future where the boundaries between species could be overcome, where unlikely allies could achieve the impossible. As they looked out at the stars, now seeming brighter than ever before, they knew that their journey was far from over. The galaxy was changing, and they would be at the forefront of that change, together. Quantum entanglement. The galactic cycles that followed the Void Harbinger incident brought unprecedented change to Nexus Station and the known universe. Jack and Zara found themselves thrust into the spotlight as symbols of interspecies cooperation, their unlikely partnership sparking a movement that came to be known as the Cosmic Confluence. As they stood on the newly constructed Unity Spire, the highest point of Nexus Station, Jack marveled at how much had changed. The station itself had been transformed, its architecture now a harmonious blend of design elements from 100 different worlds. Species that had once kept to their own enclaves now mingled freely, sharing knowledge and culture in ways never before imagined. "It's beautiful, isn't it?" Zora said, her iridescent skin shimmering in the starlight. "But I fear we've only scratched the surface of what's to come." Before Jack could respond, a holographic alert materialized before them. The face of Admiral Kira, the station's new human security chief, appeared, her expression grave. "We've got a situation," Kira said without preamble. Our long-range sensors have picked up something impossible. Moments later, Jack and Zara stood in the heart of Nexus Command, surrounded by the most advanced technology the allied species could produce. On the main view screen, a swirling vortex of energy pulsed and writhed, its colors defying description. "What are we looking at?" Jack asked, his engineer's mind already racing through possibilities. Dr. Zixlax, a quantumite scientist whose body was a constantly shifting cloud of subatomic particles, floated forward. "We believe it to be a tear in the very fabric of reality itself, a byproduct, perhaps, of our use of the Heartstone against the Void Harbingers." Zara's luminous eyes widened. "Are you saying we caused this?" "Not directly," Zixlax replied, his form flickering with uncertainty. "But our actions may have awakened something ancient and powerful." As if in response to the scientist's words, the vortex on the screen pulsed, and a sound unlike anything Jack had ever heard reverberated through the command center. It was as if the universe itself was screaming. Alarms blared as sensor readings went haywire. "Energy spike," one of the technicians shouted. It's pulling everything toward it." Jack watched in horror as the vortex began to grow, its tendrils of impossible energy reaching out across space. In the distance, entire star systems were being drawn in, consumed by the insatiable maw of unreality. "If we don't find a way to close that thing," Admiral Kira said, her voice tight with tension, "it'll devour everything in this sector. Maybe the entire galaxy." Jack turned to Zara, seeing his own determination reflected in her alien eyes. "We faced impossible odds before," he said. "We'll find a way." What followed was a frantic race against time as the brightest minds from across the galaxy worked to understand and counter the reality-warping phenomenon. Jack found himself at the center of it all, his unique human perspective allowing him to make connections that others missed. Zara, meanwhile, delved deep into ancient Vexari lore, searching for any mention of similar events in her people's vast history. As the vortex grew ever larger, consuming entire civilizations in its wake, she made a startling discovery. "The Cosmic Weave," she announced to the assembled leaders of Nexus Station. "An artifact of immense power, said to have been used by the precursors to shape reality itself." "The precursors?" Jack asked, the term unfamiliar to him. Dr. Zixlax's particle cloud swirled with excitement. "A mythical race said to have seeded the galaxy with life eons ago. But surely they're just legend." Zara shook her head. "My people have always believed them to be real. And if the Cosmic Weave exists, it might be our only hope of closing the vortex." Admiral Kira leaned forward, her eyes narrowed. "Where would we even begin to look for such an artifact?" "The void between," Zara replied, her voice hushed with awe. "A realm of non-space that exists between realities. The journey there would be perilous." Jack stepped forward, his decision made before he even realized it. "I'll go," he said. "I've got the best chance of understanding the technology if we find it." Zara's hand found his, their fingers intertwining. "We'll go," she corrected. "Our strength has always been in working together." As preparations were made for the most dangerous mission in galactic history, Jack and Zara found a moment alone. Standing before the quantum drive that would take them into the unknown, Jack felt a surge of emotion he could no longer ignore. "Zara," he began, his voice thick with feeling, "if we don't make it back." She silenced him with a gesture, her luminous eyes boring into his. "In all the vast cosmos," she said softly, "there is no one I would rather face the impossible with than you, Jack Carter." Their lips met in a kiss that defied the laws of nature, human and Vexari, joining in a union that would have once been unthinkable. As they parted, the air around them seemed to shimmer with possibility. With one last look at the station that had brought them together, Jack and Zara stepped into the quantum drive. In a flash of light that rippled across dimensions, they vanished, hurtling toward a realm where the very laws of physics broke down. As Nexus Station watched its heroes disappear, a new chapter in the saga of the universe began to unfold. The The fate of all existence now rested in the hands of a human engineer and a Vexori diplomat, two beings from different worlds who had found in each other the strength to challenge destiny itself. The void between awaited, with all its terrors and wonders, and beyond it, perhaps, lay the key to saving reality as they knew it. The greatest adventure in the history of the cosmos had begun. Echoes of eternity. The void between defied all comprehension. As Jack and Zara materialized in this realm of non-space, their senses were assaulted by impossible geometries and colors that had no right to exist. Reality itself seemed to bend and twist around them, threatening to tear their very beings apart. Jack. Zara's voice echoed strangely, as if coming from everywhere and nowhere at once. We must focus. Remember why we're here. Gritting his teeth against the onslaught of sensory overload, Jack reached out and grasped Zara's hand. The familiar touch anchored him, allowing his mind to clear. Right, he managed. The cosmic weave. How do we find it in this? As if in response to his question, a path of shimmering light materialized before them, winding its way through the chaos of the void. With no other options, they began to follow it, each step feeling like an eternity and an instant simultaneously. As they traversed this mind-bending landscape, Jack and Zara encountered echoes of realities both familiar and utterly alien. They glimpsed worlds where evolution had taken radically different paths, civilizations that had risen and fallen in the blink of a cosmic eye, and beings of pure thought that regarded physical form as a quaint curiosity. It's incredible, Jack breathed, his scientific mind struggling to process the wonders around them. Every possibility, every potential future and past, it's all here. Zara's luminous eyes were wide with awe. The ancient texts spoke of the void between, but I never imagined. Wait, what's that? Ahead of them, the path of light terminated at a massive structure that seemed to defy the very concept of architecture. It shifted and changed even as they watched, its form never settling on any one configuration. The nexus of realities, Zara whispered. It must be. The text said the precursors used it to observe and influence all possible timelines. As they approached, a figure materialized before them, a being of pure energy, its form constantly shifting between humanoid and something utterly incomprehensible. Seekers, the being's voice resonated directly in their minds. You have come far, driven by a noble purpose, but are you prepared for the truth that awaits you? Jack stepped forward, his voice steady despite the awe he felt. We've come for the cosmic weave. Our reality is being torn apart, and we need it to save countless lives. The being's form flickered, and for a moment, Jack thought he saw a hint of sadness in its ever-changing visage. The weave is not a tool to be used lightly. Its power shaped the very foundations of your universe. To wield it is to bear the weight of all possible futures. Zara joined Jack, her presence a comforting warmth at his side. We understand the risks, but we've seen what happens when species come together, when we reach beyond our limitations. Whatever the cost, we're willing to pay it. The being regarded them silently for what felt like an eternity. Then, with a gesture, a portal opened behind it, revealing a chamber that pulsed with raw, primordial energy. Enter, the being intoned. But know this, the choice you make here will reshape the destiny of all realities. Choose wisely. Hand in hand, Jack and Zara stepped through the portal. Inside, they found themselves surrounded by strands of pure possibility, each one representing a different timeline, a different potential future for their universe. At the center of it all hung the cosmic weave, a tapestry of energy so beautiful and terrible that it brought tears to their eyes. Jack could feel its power calling to him, offering knowledge beyond imagining. I can see everything, he whispered, his voice filled with wonder and horror in equal measure. Every choice, every outcome, the birth and death of entire galaxies. Zara's grip on his hand tightened. Jack, focus. We need to find the thread that leads back to our reality, to the vortex that's tearing it apart. As they searched the infinite strands of the weave, a terrible realization began to dawn on them. The vortex that threatened their home wasn't just a random occurrence. It was a vital part of the universe's natural cycle, a way for reality to renew itself. "If we stop it," Jack said, his voice heavy with the weight of understanding, "we'll be disrupting the cosmic balance. The consequences could be unimaginable," Zara finished. "But if we do nothing, countless lives will be lost. Entire civilizations wiped from existence." They stood there on the precipice of a decision that would shape the fate of all realities. The power to rewrite the very laws of nature was at their fingertips, but the responsibility it carried was almost too much to bear. In that moment of crisis, Jack turned to Zara, seeing in her alien eyes the same mix of fear and determination that he felt. "Whatever we decide," he said softly, "we decide together." Zara nodded, a smile touching her lips despite the gravity of the situation. "Together," she agreed, "as it has always been." With a shared breath, they reached out and grasped the strands of the cosmic weave. Power beyond imagining surged through them, threatening to overwhelm their very beings. But their connection, the bond forged through trials and triumphs, anchored them. In a blinding flash of light that rippled across all realities, Jack and Zara made their choice. They didn't simply close the vortex, they reshaped the very fabric of the cosmos, creating a new paradigm where the renewal of reality could occur without the wholesale destruction of existing life. As the energy of the weave flowed through them, melding human ingenuity with Vexori wisdom, they saw glimpses of the future they were creating. A universe where the barriers between species continued to crumble, where the combined knowledge and strengths of all races led to heights of achievement never before imagined. When the light faded, Jack and Zara found themselves back on Nexus Station, changed in ways they couldn't fully comprehend. Around them, the fabric of reality settled into its new configuration, the threat of the vortex gone but not forgotten. As news of their success spread throughout the galaxy, Jack and Zara knew that their journey was far from over. They had glimpsed the infinite possibilities of existence, and with that knowledge came a new responsibility. Together, they would guide their fellow beings into this new age of cosmic understanding. The human and the Vexari, once separated by vast gulfs of biology and culture, now stood as living proof that the greatest wonders of the universe could only be achieved when differences were embraced and barriers transcended. As they looked out at the stars, now somehow brighter and more full of promise than ever before, Jack and Zara knew one thing with absolute certainty: the greatest adventure of all was just beginning.